seeking justice as best they can.
Her body went missing from a local funeral home in 2015.
The funeral home is being sued by a family after the body of their loved one could not be found following a memorial service.
We begin with a bizarre story. The body of a 25-year-old woman stolen from a San Antonio funeral home.
Almost exactly 2 months after their daughter's body disappeared from a Northside funeral home, the parents of Julie Mott are again pleading for the public.
The story of what happened to Julie Mott has been floating around the internet for years now, popping up in forums, articles, and all kinds of reports, both independent and mainstream. The core facts never really change, but the theories, those keep shifting, twisting, and getting darker with time. What actually happened is still a mystery, but one thing is crystal clear: this case hits different. It's not disturbing in the usual way people expect. It cuts deeper, straight into basic human decency and respect. Most people agree on one simple idea. When someone passes away, their body should be treated with dignity and laid to rest peacefully. That's universal. But for Julie, a young woman who lost her life after a brutal illness, that basic respect was taken away. One moment, her body was present at her funeral. The next moment, gone, vanished. Just like that. To this day, nobody knows who took her or where she ended up, and that alone makes this case chilling. My name's Andrew, and today we're diving into this deeply unsettling case involving Julie Mott's missing body. We're going to break down exactly what happened, who was involved, and the theories people still argue about years later. By the end, you'll have to decide for yourself what explanation makes the most sense. So let's head to Texas and unpack one of the strangest funeral theft cases ever recorded. On the morning of August 15th, 2015, the Mott family gathered at Mission Park Funeral Home in San Antonio, Texas, to say goodbye to Julie Mott. She was just 25 years old when she passed away after a long, exhausting battle with cystic fibrosis. This disease is no joke. It's a genetic condition with no cure, slowly damaging the body over time and making every day a struggle. Friends and family filled the chapel that day, sharing memories, offering comfort, and honoring Julie's life with heavy hearts. What makes it even more emotional is that the funeral happened on her birthday. Julie would have turned 26 that very day, making the loss hit even harder. That day, nobody walked into that funeral thinking they were witnessing the opening chapter of a mystery that would haunt San Antonio for years. This was supposed to be a quiet, respectful goodbye, not the start of something shocking and impossible to explain, yet that's exactly what it became. What happened next didn't just fade away with time, it stuck, digging into Julie's family in a way that still feels cruel and deeply unfair. On the surface, Mission Park Funeral Home looked completely normal, just like countless others across the U.S. It was part of a large funeral home corporation, polished, professional, and supposedly locked down tight. The place had security cameras, an alarm system, and staff on site around the clock. Everything about it screamed secure. But shortly after Julie's funeral ended, something happened that made all those safeguards look useless and raised some serious questions. The plan for Julie was simple and clearly laid out. Once the service ended, her body was to be taken to a preparation room and held safely until cremation the following day. Her family was told her remains would be protected. That promise didn't hold up. Around 1:30 p.m., the ceremony wrapped up. Guests paid their respects, walked out the front doors, and headed home. Inside, everything appeared normal. But when employees came back the next morning to begin preparations, Julie Mott's body was gone. No confusion, no delay, just gone. At first, nobody could believe it. This kind of thing just doesn't happen. The staff assumed someone had moved her to another room, maybe a hallway, maybe storage. That hope disappeared fast. A full check of the building turned up nothing. There were no signs of forced entry. The alarm never went off. The only thing left behind was the empty stretcher where Julie was supposed to be. That's when the reality hit. Someone may have actually taken her. As grim as that sounds, it was now on the table. Police were called immediately. Julie's family was shattered, and the media jumped on the story fast. Pressure mounted, questions piled up, and a full investigation was set into motion. Because the alarm system never went off, investigators quickly locked onto one chilling theory. This wasn't some random break-in. It had to be an inside job. Someone who knew the layout, the access points, and the codes had to be involved. And that opens up an even darker question nobody wants to say out loud. Why would anyone want a young woman's body in the first place? That part is deeply unsettling, and it still makes people uncomfortable to even think about. Police immediately began questioning employees, digging into schedules, routines, and access privileges. Every single staff member insisted they had no clue what happened. When detectives reviewed the security footage, things only got stranger. The cameras showed no one breaking in, no doors forced open, no suspicious movement at all. It was like Julie's body vanished into thin air. That led to an even more disturbing possibility. Whoever took her may have already been inside the building when it was locked.
The lawsuit, the Motts blame Mission Park Funeral Chapel for negligent conduct and gross negligence after their daughter's body went missing on August 16. In court, it was all eyes on Dick Tips, the funeral home owner and a family friend of the Motts.
Up after the ceremony, Julie's body had been placed in a hallway that didn't have camera coverage, which meant there was no footage of her being moved, no visuals, no proof. To make matters worse, no one could clearly say when her body was last seen. It felt like everyone was afraid to be that person, the last one with access, because that alone could point fingers and raise suspicion. The confusion stacked up fast, and with no signs of forced entry, every scenario suddenly seemed possible. Investigators believed the theft likely happened shortly after the funeral ended. That meant anyone who attended the service could have stayed behind, hidden somewhere, waited for the building to clear out, and then quietly walked out a side door. That idea sent chills through the entire investigation. Detectives took this extremely seriously and treated it more like a homicide than a simple theft. Employees were grilled, visitor logs were examined line by line, security footage was reviewed again and again. Still nothing. No fingerprints, no footprints, no solid evidence. The case completely defied logic. To really understand how this situation spiraled so badly, you have to look at two key players at the center of this mess. Mission Park and Buyer and Beitel. Both operated within the funeral service industry, and both would soon find themselves wrapped up in a storm of legal trouble and public backlash. What followed would expose serious cracks in how human remains were handled, protected, and respected, and those revelations only made this case even more disturbing. Mission Park is one of the biggest and most recognizable funeral home chains in San Antonio, and it's always marketed itself as a place built on compassion, care, and dignity. But this case cracked that image wide open. The disappearance of Julie Mott's body didn't just hurt the company's reputation, it exposed serious questions about security and internal controls. If a body could vanish while under their care, people started asking the obvious question, how safe is anyone else's loved one there? Then there's Buyer and Beitel, another funeral service provider that became a major piece of this puzzle. According to statements from former employees, Buyer and Beitel had a working relationship with Mission Park and regularly delivered bodies after hours. That alone raised eyebrows. But things got even more alarming when a former employee, Corina Kasser, stepped forward. In an affidavit, she stated that she had keys to Mission Park and full alarm codes, allowing her to enter the facility unsupervised during off hours. That revelation turned her into a central figure in the investigation fast. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. If Karina had that kind of access, how many other current or former employees had the same privileges? According to her testimony, she entered the funeral home nearly every other weekend, using keys and alarm codes that were kept right inside a company van. That setup wasn't just risky, it was wide open for abuse. What was once brushed off as normal industry cooperation suddenly looked careless and dangerous. The idea that multiple people could access the funeral home late at night without supervision raised serious red flags. Julie's family didn't waste time. They filed a lawsuit against Mission Park, accusing the company of failing to protect their daughter's remains and lacking proper accountability. From their perspective, the system failed at every level. Mission Park pushed back hard. Their legal team argued that Julie's disappearance couldn't have happened without insider involvement. They pointed fingers at Beyer and Beetle, suggesting their loose access protocols may have played a role. With former employees admitting they had unrestricted access to the property, the blame game escalated fast, and the truth became even harder to pin down. But this case didn't stop with Julie's disappearance. There was already smoke in the air before the fire even started. Investigators uncovered that just months earlier, Beyer and Beetle had been involved in another serious body mix-up. The remains of 73-year-old Patrice Garza were mistakenly switched with another woman's body. That error wasn't small. It led straight to a lawsuit and a settlement, and it badly bruised the company's credibility. Suddenly, this wasn't looking like a one-time mistake. It looked like a pattern. As accusations flew back and forth between Mission Park and Beyer and Beetle, a bigger issue came into focus. There were glaring problems with security, chain of custody rules, and basic oversight in how human remains were handled. But even beyond the lawsuits and legal finger-pointing, one question refused to go away. Who would take Julie, and for what reason?
Again showed up at the funeral home where Mott's body disappeared from. The new evidence was presented during an arraignment hearing this morning for 31-year-old Bill Wilburn. He faces 2 counts of criminal trespassing. Investigators say he was repeatedly caught on surveillance cameras at Mission Park North Funeral Home, including on February 20th, 10 days after he was first charged.
Plenty of people might have had access, sure, but motive matters. Why her? Julie's mother, Charlotte, wrestled with that question more than anyone. To her, the idea that a random stranger would steal her daughter just didn't add up. This kind of crime is extremely rare, so why Julie? Why her child? Charlotte believed whoever took Julie knew her personally, maybe even fixated on her, unable to let go. In her mind, that person attended the funeral, waited quietly, and took Julie when no one was watching. That thought haunted her. Then another name entered the picture, and everything got more complicated. Julie's ex-boyfriend, Bill Wilburn, caught investigators' attention. Body theft cases are rare, but in this situation, his involvement raised serious questions about motive. Bill and Julie had been separated for 2 years before her funeral, but according to people close to them, his feelings for her never faded. Some said he still wanted her back, badly. Detectives looked closely at his movements that day. Records and witness statements showed that Bill was the last attendee to leave the funeral home. He stayed behind for an extra 10 to 15 minutes after everyone else had gone. Eventually, a Mission Park employee escorted him out and locked the door behind him. That detail set off alarms for Julie's family, who were already desperate for answers. Hoping someone would come forward, the Motts offered a $20,000 reward for any information that could lead to the return of Julie's remains. Bill was desperate too, just in a very different way. Allegedly, he threw himself into the case, demanding answers and pushing hard for explanations. His behavior quickly crossed lines. In a single day, he reportedly called Mission Park staff more than 200 times, non-stop, pouring out anger and frustration. That level of pressure led to serious consequences. Mission Park issued a criminal trespass notice against him, banning him from all their properties. You'd think that would shut it down. It didn't. 9 months later, Bill was caught again, this time on security cameras, trying to get into Mission Park North. Employees spotted him, and prosecutors later confirmed that he returned to the same funeral home where Julie's body disappeared. This new evidence came out during an arraignment hearing involving 31-year-old Bill Wilburn. He was charged with 2 counts of criminal trespassing, and investigators said surveillance cameras had repeatedly captured him at the property, including on February 20th. Just 10 days after his initial charge, he was arrested again. The pattern was hard to ignore. Charlotte, Julie's mother, had already been deeply unsettled by his behavior. During a 2-week period, Bill reportedly called the family's home more than a dozen times between midnight and 4 in the morning. Calls like that at those hours don't feel normal to most people. Those actions kept him firmly on investigators' radar. Still, despite all the red flags, authorities never found enough solid evidence to directly tie him to the theft of Julie's body. Suspicion alone wasn't enough. Meanwhile, the civil lawsuit against Mission Park moved forward. In 2020, it ended in a settlement. The funeral home agreed to pay the Mott family $8 million in compensation. While that money offered some financial relief, it didn't bring Julie back. It didn't explain what happened, and it didn't heal the pain of parents who had already lost their daughter, only to be left wondering where her body went. That kind of grief doesn't fade easily. The Mott family continues to search for answers, even as time works against them. With every passing year, the chances of ever recovering Julie's remains grow slimmer. In the wake of her disappearance, San Antonio has seen a surge of theories and speculation. Conversations spread through the local community and online spaces, filling the silence left by an investigation that still hasn't delivered closure. Officially, the case remains unsolved, but the mystery keeps growing, and the questions refuse to die. Even without hard proof, alternative theories have filled the silence left by this case, and some of them are deeply unsettling. One of the most debated ideas suggests Julie Mott's disappearance wasn't an accident at all. Instead, it may have been something planned from inside Mission Park itself. With the subcontracted company Buyer and Vital having broad, largely unrestricted access to the facility, people started asking uncomfortable questions. Could Mission Park employees have been involved, possibly pressured or tempted by money? The lack of forced entry and the silent alarm system only added fuel.
The person who took her could not have loved her any more than I do. It is breaking my heart each and every day. I don't care who you are, but somehow get word to someone where we can find her. So we ask that you please return our Julie to us.
To that suspicion, an inside cooperation or cover-up. As disturbing as it sounds, it remains a real possibility. Another theory goes even darker. Some believe Julie's body may have been taken for illegal sale. That idea sounds extreme at first, but it hasn't been completely dismissed. Funeral services operate behind closed doors, and certain employees have unsupervised access to human remains. In rare cases around the world, underground markets have existed where bodies are illegally sold for unauthorized research or other hidden uses. If that's what happened here, it wouldn't have been a solo act. It would have required coordination between insiders and people outside the funeral industry. That thought alone makes this case even harder to stomach. There's also the question of intent at the top. Was this a deliberate cover-up by higher-level management, or did they truly not know they had hired people capable of something like this? Getting that answer would require a far deeper investigation than what's ever been made public. But there's another theory that's just as troubling, and maybe even more believable. Some believe Julie's body was never stolen at all. Instead, an internal administrative failure may have occurred. A breakdown in communication, a paperwork error, or a procedural lapse could have led to her body being cremated too early or mistakenly released to another family. Faced with the fallout of such a massive mistake, the funeral home may have chosen silence over honesty. Covering it up would have seemed easier than admitting an error that could destroy public trust. If that theory is true, then Julie's disappearance wasn't the result of malice. It was negligence on a shocking scale, and once the truth slipped out of reach, the damage was already done. A scandal like that could shut a business down overnight. After all, who would feel safe trusting their loved ones to an organization capable of losing someone and never owning up to it? That's the question that still hangs heavy over this case, and it's one that refuses to go away. As for Julie's ex-boyfriend, Bill Wilburn, investigators were never able to directly connect him to the disappearance of her body. Still, many people continue to question his actions. His erratic behavior, repeated attempts to gather information, and intense involvement in the case made some believe his actions could have been part of something bigger. Others think it may have been impulsive, driven by grief, desperation, or emotional confusion after Julie's death. The theory suggests that shortly after the funeral ended, he may have slipped back inside and taken her body for a personal reason. Whether that was about control, attachment, or something else entirely remains unknown. And that's the thing about this case. It has spawned countless theories, some more believable than others. While the truth remains out of reach, every possible explanation leads to one deeply disturbing conclusion. Someone took Julie's body. Someone crossed a line that most people don't even want to imagine. And wherever her remains are now, they could be anywhere in the world. That reality is what makes this case one of the most haunting and controversial stories in San Antonio's history, and it's why the lack of closure hurts so deeply. As time passes, the real issue becomes clearer. This case didn't just expose the mishandling of Julie's remains. It raised serious questions about trust, accountability, and the funeral service industry itself. Was there a cover-up? Was the body taken for personal reasons, financial motives, or something darker? We don't know. What we do know is that when someone we love passes away, we place full trust in funeral homes to treat them with dignity and care. We assume professionalism means safety, but this case proves that assumption isn't always guaranteed. The uncomfortable truth is that there are individuals who don't take that responsibility seriously. Some may be careless, others may have harmful intentions. And that realization forces us to confront a hard question. Can any system like this be trusted 100%? That lingering doubt is what keeps this story alive long after the headlines faded. That's it for this episode of Every Town. If this story shook you, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves true mysteries. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know which theory you believe makes the most sense. Be sure to check out more episodes on the channel, and don't forget to come back next time. I'll see you on the next one.